Hello, and welcome to this section on Terraform. So, before we jump in, what is Terraform? Terraform is infrastructure as code, meaning you can set up resources like VMs, storage buckets, BigQuery datasets, and things like that are physically running on servers somewhere else. But you define these resources as code rather than going into the user interface and setting them up manually. If you've heard the term Terraform outside of the software, you might have heard of it in the context of science fiction, where they talk about planets and making it habitable for human life, making it more like Earth. And it's kind of the same concept. So, you would start with a blank slate and you would probably need oxygen, an atmosphere, soil, plant life, all that. So the concept is kind of the same of just starting with a blank slate and then building up from there. And one of the great things about Terraform is it's cloud provider agnostic, meaning they have different providers that allow you to set up resources in Azure and AWS and GCP. So hopefully that kind of gives you a concept of what Terraform can do. So let's jump right in. So I already have Terraform set up here, and I've already made a few files. There's plenty of resources out there for installing Terraform on your system, whether you're on Linux or Mac or Windows. And if you notice here, I don't really have much highlighting or anything like that, so I'm going to go over here to extensions, and I'm going to look for a Terraform extension. And I see the one here from HashiCorp, which makes Terraform, so I'm going to go ahead and install that. And while that's installing, or actually that was a really quick install, now you see everything here is pretty and highlighted and all nice like that. So let me go ahead and open up a browser and log into GCP. It's the first one there. And I just created this account recently. Yeah, I'll go ahead and activate my free credits. And we're just going to go down to IAM and admin and over to service accounts. A service account, really quickly, is just an account like any other. If you are logged into your local PC, chances are you have your name there, and that is your user account. But unlike those user accounts where you are expected to log into, service accounts just have certain rights and privileges and things that they can do, but are not expected to be logged into. You cannot log into, that's a permission on a system, which they don't have. So they should never be logged into. And we're just going to create a service account, and I'll just call this Terraform demo. And I'll give it a description that's the same as its name. Not really much point in that, but better to check all the boxes. So we are going to be setting up a GCP bucket and a BigQuery dataset. So here, cloud storage. Oh, and actually I just remembered it doesn't really let you search the predefined roles here too well. So let me just go down to cloud storage. And I'll just go ahead and make them an admin. In practice, you would want this to be more granular. If you're only setting up buckets and destroying them, you wouldn't necessarily want them to have permissions on the objects inside the bucket, but that's kind of outside the scope of this demonstration. And BigQuery admin, so we can create a data set, and I will just hit continue. We don't need any of that. And here we can just go to manage keys, and I want to create a new key, and JSON is fine. And we see we have that. Just gives two random words, random numbers and characters, and then .json, and that's going to be in my downloads folder. So if I go there, I see that's there, and I could use the file explorer, copy and paste that, but I'll just go ahead, and I know I'm going to be putting that in Terra demo, the directory I created for this. So I can just go ahead and use the move command in Linux. You can just copy and paste if that's easier. That's fine. And I will just call this demo.json. All right. So back to the Terraform files. So at the top here, we have the provider, which is what lets us communicate with GCP. So HashiCorp has put together this package that has the functionality, the resources here that lets us interact, create, destroy, modify resources like that. And so if I just open up a terminal here, and I'm just going to do a Terraform init, and I already have an error on line 43, extra curly bracket. Let's see if this will highlight, and that all looks good. Do I need to save it? All right, it just wasn't saved. What did we get with that? Well, we got this .terraform, and if you look in there, this is probably not human readable, but this is the functionality of the Google provider. And I just have the version number there. And then we have a lock.hcl file. And so this is going to be the hashes of what has been created, what it's seen. So when we modify and we want to update a resource, it's going to know that it needs to make a change. So it's pretty straightforward after the providers. You just define resource, and if you go out here to the internet, you can do Terraform GCP resources probably, and that just takes me to the provider. Oh, Terraform on Google Cloud. There's some tutorials there. Just getting started. Probably have better resources if you know what you want to create. Like if I said cloud storage, okay, then that's going to give me a nice example that tells Terraform what functionality I'd like to use. And this second part is just going to be a friendly name you can use to refer to this block inside of your Terraform file. Okay, so let's head back. So we are defining a storage bucket, and if you notice, I am not putting in the project name, the region, the zone. I'm actually using a variables file. And just by default, Terraform knows if you have a var dot something, go ahead and look for a variables.tf file and look for it there. So let's see, project. Probably be good if, oh, I probably should have created a project, but my first project will work. But if you are not too familiar, that is not my project name. Definitely not. It's actually going to be the project ID here. And, oh, the service account name was not random. That is actually based on the project ID. So if we go back here and we'll go to variables, we want to say this is our project because our service account has rights and privileges to access things there. Make sure that's spelled right. And let's see. I've got my service account file here. That's probably fine, but I'm actually going to do this a little differently. Terraform variable file. Let's see, service account. Did I pass it there? Let's see, load file with Terraform. Okay, and that's just file and then the path to that file. So, well, I'm not even going to copy and paste that. I'm just going to say file, and it is demo.json. Because it's in the same directory, it should see that. For the region, you can get granular here. So if we look, we're going to access Google. And that's going to grab my credentials file. And the credentials file, don't need to worry about the description, but by default, that's going to grab the file listed here. So that's pretty useful if you're versioning Terraform, putting it on GitHub. Put the .json in your git ignore. Notice the Terraform files are .tf, so those will get pushed, pulled, versioned, and then you can share your service account file in a different way so it doesn't fall into malicious hands. And here for region, we have US Central 1, and for zone, US Central 1C. And actually, if we look, we're going to make a storage bucket. And that's going to be, let's see, that's left over. So let me go ahead and I'm just going to do the project ID underscore bucket, and the region, and we could also do zone here. Like that. And actually, I'm not sure if that's correct. The spacing, a nice thing to be able to do is you can do Terraform FMT, and that's going to, in theory, just straighten up anything. So let's see. Content of the file is newer. You know what? I'm just going to overwrite that. Save. And there we go. So notice it kind of lined everything up. Storage class. Again, we can check our variables. And it doesn't look like I have that. So I can just do variable storage class, description, GCS bucket, storage class, and by default, I'm just going to make that standard. And I only know that that's an option and that's the one I want just by using it. Going through this, and again, run that, lines everything up nice. So let's see if we're missing anything else. Uniform bucket level access is true, meaning everything in the bucket is going to have the same access level. That is fine. Versioning true. That's probably good to have in case you overwrite something. You could set that to false, and you don't need that. And then lifecycle rule, after 30 days, delete. Force destroy, true. And here we're going to make a BigQuery dataset, and the dataset ID. Do we have that in here? Yep, I've got that in there as Terra demo, and the project is going to be the project we defined at the top, and here location is going to be the region. Just because if you are going to be creating external tables in BigQuery, meaning you are going to use files stored in Google Cloud Storage to create the table, you can run into some issues with zones. Not all zones can be picked up and used by BigQuery. I think that just has to do where the different data centers are, and whether they have BigQuery running there, but honestly I'm not sure. But we can get around that by just getting rid of zone, and save that, and we can just comment this out just so we know that we are not using it. And because I am in the US, I can just say US. That will give me multi-region storage, and it will find, I believe, a multi-region to run BigQuery as well. And one other thing we might want to check, if we go in here and we look for BigQuery, notice there's no data sets. Should be the same with Google Cloud Storage buckets. You may need to enable the API. I just keep kind of building accounts off of my main Google account, just to start with a fresh slate for some of these demos. I don't know how that affects it. So if you're getting errors, just jump into the web page here, make sure those APIs are enabled. All right, now we should be all set. We will do Terraform plan, which should show us what it is going to do. Functions may not be called here. Let's see. So line 8. That looks right to me. Maybe it doesn't want the quotes. Let's see, variables.tf, file function, Terraform. And this file in here, it's not giving me much. That should have worked as is. Well, let's see. I need to dot slash. Let's see. Oh, probably because I'm using file here after I grab that name. So I bet if I just make it a string, there we go. Another input variable with zone has not been declared. This variable can be declared with the variable zones block. I think it's because I put the zone here and I commented it out in the variables. All right. And if we look here, it's just going to say what it's going to create. So we are doing a BigQuery dataset, and dataset ID will be Terra demo. The location will be US. Delete contents on destroy is false. Project And you can read through this. I won't read through all of that. That's probably pretty boring. Let me shrink this down. And we'll just go ahead and apply that. And we're just going to say, yes, that is in fact what we want to do. So that was all created. If we go back here and look at our buckets now, there might be some delay, but it should be fairly quick. So we see we have our bucket. If we go ahead and go over to BigQuery, you see we have Terra demo. So some of you might be saying, big whoop, you set up resources, so now what? Well, when you think about the past few years, maybe even the past decade, a lot of the way technology and development has been going is to get around that old problem of, well, hey, it worked on my system. Docker, make files, and I'm drawing a blank on other things, but you can imagine combining this with, say, a GitHub repository where you have different projects, one for production and one for tests, and it's going to make maybe different subnets and resources, and there are a lot of things you can build out with this, firewall rules, just to name a few. And then you pull down the code and run it. It interacts with that infrastructure. You see how it's taxing the memory, hard drive, network. And you can play around with both the code and the infrastructure, and you know that you're using the same infrastructure that's going to be used in production. So then once you have that code working, if you need to adjust the infrastructure, you can do that, push that out, and you know that's going to be the same, and the code that you developed is going to be running on the same resources to reduce any potential issues. So I think that's a very powerful tool, and you'll probably only see, if not Terraform, infrastructure as code, just keep being used and built out. Probably Terraform, because I think they are the dominant player, and they really have been keeping up nicely with development. So one last thing. So say, again, small example. You know what? It turns out we were just going to make a Google Cloud Storage bucket. Or, well, actually, let's go ahead and say, you know what? We were just going to make that BigQuery dataset. We don't need that bucket at all. Go ahead and save that and do a Terraform plan. And you can see, well, what's going to change? Well, that storage bucket is going to be destroyed. And if we come back here, we see our happy storage bucket living its happy life in the US multi-region. But when we come in here and do a Terraform apply, and is this what we would like? Yes. And if we come back here, we see now that is gone. And I almost forgot one of the most important things with Terraform, and probably one of the most helpful, is once we're done with everything, we can just go ahead and do a Terraform destroy. And you see a bunch of output here, but the big one is the data set will be destroyed. So say you're working on something, you're ready for all of your resources to be gone, all the files you added. Go ahead and Terraform destroy will take care of that cleanup, so you don't get a crazy bill by surprise. And if we go back here just to double check, which is always good if you have the time, I have come across several data engineering projects where they provide you the Terraform files as well as other GitHub repos, and for whatever reason not all of the resources were destroyed. I was tipped off to that because I saw errors in this output here. So again, probably pretty safe, but always good to double check. So that's all we have for this video. Hopefully you got a little bit of flavor of what Terraform is, its capabilities, and its usefulness in today's tech stack. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to leave me a comment down below the video. And that's it for this time.